You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
Right up Meridian, baby.
All right, folks, welcome back. Scott here with you. Normally, we're not going to do game-by-game reactions because we're busy, we have a life, but man, that was an awesome game last night. In-season tournament win, beat the Celtics. I was there. We have Tony, co-host, is with me. He was watching on TV, but I just got to say, being there, not to rub it in Tony's face, but that was awesome. Like, everything you heard, everything on the TV, like, it came through. It didn't, as is, it never fully replicates. But I mean, I was with my 10-year-old son, which was awesome because he was like, that was amazing. Like, he's getting into the NBA. He's fired up for the tournament. You see how marketing works because, like, he loves the courts. He loves the jerseys. Like, everything about what the NBA is doing is, like, so up my 10-year-old's wheelhouse. But it's like, to have a game like that and have an experience for him at that age, I'm just like, it's awesome because, like, that's locked in. But that, I've not heard Gainbridge like that. And I remember going to, like, the Paul George playoff games, you know, against the Cavs. You know, the couple years they seem to play the Raptors every year and lose in the first round. You know, some of those Oladipo games. That crowd was lit. It was awesome. You know, you have MVP chants, which I can't remember hearing, or at least being like, that is legitimate. It actually makes sense. And then that sequence of the Haliburton, you know, 4-point play into the Buddy Hield 3, into the steal, into the Neesmith dunk. Like, that was just an epic run. But anyway, we had to do a quick reaction pod because I think it's a kind of a moment for Indiana. But Tony, man, you watched it. What did you see out there?
Yeah, I was very jealous of you. So,
I know,
and
I was
many others on
was...
Instagram I saw, you know,
Yeah.
posting. But it excited me that, you know, so many of my buddies were there. You know, people I saw on Twitter were talking about the Pacers. I was a little annoyed. So from a television perspective, I think we all know the Bally app is horrible.
My God.
So it was
Yeah.
that was like buffering and being delayed. And so I was getting annoyed with that. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to flip over to TNT. Well, then at halftime, Chuck and those guys were like, Chuck literally said, like, this is an easy game for the Celtics. You know, the Pacers aren't a tough team. They don't play tough. Now, granted, he did redeem himself later in the evening and he was like, hey, this is fun for the Pacers. We don't have them on national TV. And so we don't see a lot of them, blah, 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 blah. But it was really cool to just see, like, hey, people are talking about the Pacers.
Yep.
And that's both locally and nationally because, you know, they were kind of stuck in purgatory. And, you know, hats off to Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan and those guys and just getting Haliburton. I mean, that dude has completely changed the trajectory of the franchise, you know, and it took others obviously last night. But he certainly put the team on his back and he's electric, you know, and at halftime of the game, Kenny was talking on TNT about how Haliburton's his new favorite player. You know, the hardwood paroxysm or whatever on Twitter was talking about the number one team to watch on League Pass is the Pacers. The number 2 team to watch on League Pass is the team playing the Pacers. And so it's fun to see. And it's an exciting time to be a Pacers fan. Like I got a little frustrated with them a couple weeks ago. You know, and they blew the lead to the Heat, but then they bounced back, beat the Heat without Tyrese Haliburton. Then last night was just kind of like a culmination of like, all right, man, this is a fun team. They're fun to watch. They get it. And last night there was a level of intensity that they showcased on both ends of the floor that, you know, night in, night out, we haven't necessarily seen. And they kind of rose to the challenge, rose to the moment. And being a young team, you know, they didn't really have experience with that in playing against a team that has a ton of experience playing in big games. Like, it was really cool to see and just so much fun. And like you mentioned, like, it was coming through on the TV. I could tell the energy was hyped, but like, I know there's nothing to replicate probably what you were feeling in the stands and things like that.
Yeah, no, and I think I was hearing it this morning, like, you know, people were listening to a couple of reaction stuff already, and people are like, you know, nationally are like, man, is that the first time Haliburton's been on TNT? And I think it was. And
it was the second national TV game ever.
Yeah, and that's something we'll get, you know, it always bugs me as an Indiana fan because the schedules always come out and it's like we're never on national TV. And even when we're good, it feels like we never get the the respect of a team. Now, what's nice here is, there's that side, but then you also have to show it when you get it. And they had a national TV game and they showed up, which was nice because in the first half, it looked like, man, the Celtics are just going to grind us down. Something I talked about, I think in like 2 weeks ago, kind of looking at if, when we were going to play the Celtics, how do you beat the Celtics? And, the Celtics are all about, as I view it, all about pace. And Porzingis not being there does help, but it's like they wanted to keep the game slow. I think, Indiana's averaging like 105 possessions a game. The Celtics are like at, bottom of the league. They are, at, I think 98. And it's like when the Celtics are pushed over 100 or 105 possessions per game, that's when they lose their games. Like and you could see this dichotomy of like the Pacers trying to push, the Celtics trying to slow it down. And then that third quarter, it's like you could see that Carlisle made the adjustments, coaching matters, and they pushed the pace. And then that changed everything because I was getting worried it was just going to be kind of a slog and the Celtics were going to just grind us down, but they didn't. So anyway, the Pacers had that moment, like Haliburton showed up. And even for that, everyone's, going nuts about it, which they should. It's like, that wasn't even a great Haliburton game. Like he didn't have an awesome first half. And honestly, his fourth quarter wasn't as good. Like as Indiana fans, it's like, there's way more there. So I hope that next year when they come out with a schedule, we get a little more national love because it's all true, man. You watch a lot of the games as much as Bally Sports will let you. I go to a good number of the games. Like this is a really fun team with a lot of pieces, and they move fast, they shoot fast. Like they're up and going, and the fans are starting to get it. Like you see it in the stadium. Anybody who's open, it's like shoot it, like go. Like it's just like everyone's like go. Like everyone's like let's go, play offense, shoot, 3, go.
Yeah, what's crazy to me too is, and what I love is that Carlisle is not married to a rotation. Now he has a rotation and he plays guys, but like down the stretch yesterday, it was Nesmith. Like he's the guy. He's playing good defense. He's playing well on offense, and he rolls with Nesmith. And other times, he might go with Mathurin or he might play Toppin or whatever the case may be. So I like that there's that feel to Rick Carlisle too, where he understands matchups and he's not just married to like, all right, this is my closing lineup and I got to roll with this every single game in, game out. No, he has a flow. He understands who's playing well, who's not, who matches up well. So like that part of it, like you said, like coaching matters. They made adjustments at halftime. He talked about how they changed up their pick and roll coverage on the defensive end because Boston was kind of getting whatever they wanted in switches. So they changed that up. And then as you could tell, there was very much a concerted effort to get Tyrese Haliburton involved and push the pace. And they did, to the tune of, I think, 74 points in the second half against a good Celtics defense. Pretty incredible.
Well, and the thing with coaching is, I'd heard Doc Rivers talk about this in a podcast a couple months ago, like getting ready for the how you would coach the in-season tournament. This was before the season started. But he said something I thought was interesting was like, he's like, I'd look forward to this as kind of like it's a good spot in the middle of the year to get a playoff feel and a playoff rotation and kind of also let guys know, hey man, like this is what a playoff rotation would look like at this point. So if you're not happy with where you're at, do something. But I thought it was interesting, as you mentioned, the Celtics played 9 guys. All of them played double minutes. Banton had 11 minutes. Cornette, who, by the way, I didn't know could jump out of the gym like that on some of those. But still, he's getting 16 minutes. Pritchard did not play well, had 15 minutes. You look at the Pacers, and the Celtics, Jaylen Brown only played 31 minutes. Nobody on the Celtics had over 40 minutes. For the Pacers, Haliburton cracked 40 minutes, but TJ McConnell played 9. Nembhard played 4. And it's like everyone else, he had a tight 7-man rotation. And, to the idea of like who's going to take this seriously, it was a high intensity level game. But I do wonder from a younger coach like Mazzulla, if he really came into this thinking of it like a playoff game as opposed to just a high intensity regular season game. Whereas Carlisle, that was a playoff rotation. I mean, that's playing 7 guys tight, 2 guys in under 10 minutes, and then a bunch of DNPs. And I think that also made the difference is, you just had a lot of the same dudes out there. So I thought that was interesting how they both attacked it. And I do think that experience definitely mattered there with the way Carlisle tightened up his rotation. And you saw like, he's like at the end there, the same thing with Fields. Like you could see Nesmith was playing really good defense against, Tatum. And it's like, all right, Mathurin played well as well, but it's like, no, man, this is the guy who's like, he's hot and we're going to ride him out.
Absolutely. And, guy playing with a chip on his shoulder. That's
that's his old team. Yeah.
His old team that's basically traded him, for
nothing.
Yeah, a bag of chips. And I think there was a meme that was like a rubber band and a paper clip, and it's like, this is what the Celtics got Brogdon for. And so he like screenshotted it and reposted it, which I love. Like, I love that they played with a chip on their shoulder. He made that layup on who was it? It was
it was Derek White, and then the
he
too
did
small.
A little boy,
yeah.
Which I actually hate that celebration, but I loved it last night when he did it, just because like playing with an edge, playing with a chip on their shoulder, like it's kind of cliche.
That's something that I think Haliburton doesn't get enough credit for. I mean, and everyone's their own, but like for bringing that to this team is a little bit of edge. And you saw it a couple weeks ago in the Cleveland game where he went to that fan. He's like, "You did," like he hit like 2 threes in a row, and like yell him like, "You did this. This is your fault." You saw it last night. Like he had a finish, and then just yelled in Derek White's face, just was like not screaming, just like kind of gave him a little chest bump. And then I think they showed it. I watched some of the replays last night. Like they showed it, like he hit a 3 before the 4-point play. I think he hit a 3 over Tatum and kind of just do it like he was come back on D, kind of doing the head nod, like no, man, no. And you saw it in the third quarter where it's like, I think he could feel like, this is my moment. I'm on TNT. Like, I want to prove that I'm one of the big boys. I want to prove that I'm, first, second team all NBA, that I'm at that level. And it's like, I think he could see it like slipping away. It's like, I'm going to go take care of this and I'm going to go do something. And there's an edge there that it's really refreshing. I was telling a couple people around, it's like, it's not the great comp, but it's like, that's what I loved about Reggie Miller. Is, he did a lot of things good, but when Reggie was out there, Reggie was like, dude, I'm as good as Jordan. Like, maybe I'm not, but like, I think I am, and let's go beat the hell out of the Bulls. And there's a part of, Haliburton that has that. And I was saying, like, that's going to play really well here. Like, you got to be able to back it up. He backed it up, but if you can do that and talk a little smack and then get your team and kind of that chippiness where you're doing the too low and all that stuff, like, it works and it plays here. So anyway, I just to that moment, like I just felt like you see it seeping through the team, but also like the guys just cutting and passing, like just everything Haliburton, like you can't understate how much this guy has seeped into the team in so many positive ways. Even giving Miles Turner a bit of an edge, like a guy who's kind of just been a milquetoast vanilla guy, like he comes out with a little bit of edge sometimes too.
Yeah, it's awesome to see. And what I really appreciated, there was 2 things in the post game last night. Rick Carlisle talked about how this is awesome for the Indiana fans. He's like, the Colts are on a winning streak. The Pacers are doing, like, he gets it. Like, he understands the culture of Indiana and the fan base, and like that there hasn't been a lot to cheer about around here lately. And so I appreciated that he acknowledged like that, and that this is fun for the Pacers fans, and that's why it was electric last night. And the fans want to see the Pacers succeed. And then I appreciated Haliburton in his press conference. They were like, how are you putting these games together, and how are you playing so well? And he's like, look, like, I take it very seriously that this franchise gave me the contract they just gave me.
Yeah.
And I have to live up to that. And I know that. And so I go out there every single night trying to live up to that, because they put their faith in me to lead this franchise forward. And like, to me, for a 23-year-old to have that like thought process and kind of be introspective in that regard, like, that's pretty impressive. Like, I'd venture to say there's probably 15 to 20% of college basketball is as old as Tyrese Haliburton right now. He's 23 years old. Like, for him to have that introspective thinking, like, that's impressive. Like, not only is like his physical tools impressive, but like to have that mentality already at his age and not get cocky and complacent, like, that's really impressive.
Well, it's nice, too, for a fan base that had, what felt like a favored son in Oladipo, who then just was like, hey, man, my knees hurt, I'm out. And then you have Paul George, who, again, I will always stand by. I think while it sucks, I think Paul George did the Pacers right by not holding a gun to our head and just kind of saying, hey, I'm going to leave, go get the best you can for me. And it's like the dominoes of Paul George doing that got us to a point. I mean, it's a direct line to Tyrese Haliburton, because like George got you all the pieces that you then got Haliburton for. But it's still a guy who's like, I want out of here. And I'm with you. It's like Haliburton is always kind of doing the right thing. both on the court and off the court. And it's just so nice that he gets this coming out party. And, you know, I was thinking too, like, this is something, again, we're a little bit biased. We're doing Pacers fans, we have Pacers pod, but you know, if you're the NBA, I've said it for a while, like the Pacers are the team that you want to have in the Final Four of this midseason tournament. Cause it's like the Celtics are going to be there in the end. Like, you're going to get Jason Tatum time. You're going to get the Bucks. You know, the Lakers are obviously going to be on TV a lot, and the NBA will make sure they're in the playoffs somehow. And the Suns will be there as well. Like, a lot of these teams, and the Kings had a good run last year. I think the Kings Pelicans might be one of those teams, Pelicans now, that you want to see in that. But it's like, to me, like, if you're the, you know, Adam Silver, what you want is a nice mix of like blue bloods, like the Bucks, and young teams like the Pacers, and kind of make it like March Madness, where you have this kind of moment where it's like, oh man, this guy's making a run and this guy's making the leap. And I think the Pacers meet that bill. I also look at this tournament. I was saying this last night. I think I texted you about this too. It's like, I think the toughest game that we're going to play is the Celtics. And, you know, they're the toughest team. Maybe the toughest matchup is the Celtics. And we got them at home and we won. And I'm not saying like we're the favorites or we're going to run this thing, or that the Bucks aren't, or Knicks are going to be tough to beat. But it's like, I think that would be the hardest matchup we just had. And I look at that as like, there's really not a reason why the Pacers can't be like, hey man, let's go win this thing.
Absolutely. And it's so fun. Like, it's just fun, man. Like, that's what I keep coming back to. And that's what I was texting some buddies last night. Like, it's fun to watch. It's fun. What's most fun to me is watching these guys that are on like rookie minimums on the end of the bench losing their mind because they're on pace to make $500,000 if they win this thing. Like, that gets lost in all this too. Like, they're engaged. Like, when Haliburton made that three, they're running on the court and they're losing their mind because, I mean, for them, like for Tyrese Haliburton, $500,000, okay, whatever. But for these dudes, like, that's a year's salary or close to it for them that they could win if they win this thing. So I think that incentive being there too gets lost a little bit as well for some of those guys. You know, towards the end of the bench, I think the Pacers have 10 guys that make under $3 million.
Yeah.
So like $500,000 isn't anything to like shake a leaf at. So that part of it gets lost a little bit too. And I think the Pacers have an edge there where they've got enough guys that means something to, where they even have a little bit more motivation maybe than like a Celtics do, who have 4 or 5 guys on 20 million plus contracts.
Well, and I also, again, I keep coming back to Haliburton, but he said something, I think after the win against the 76ers or maybe the win against the Pistons, but one of those early, you know, group plays in this, which again, I think is a nice edge. He's just like, dude, I've never won anything. Like, he's like, and I want to win this. Like, I didn't win a title. I mean, he won in high school. He won a state title. But he's like, I didn't win in college. You know, I haven't won anything in the NBA. I've been to a playoff game. Like, this is there, and I want to win it. And I love that. I think there's that edge, too, where there is, you know, the Pacers are not going to win an NBA title this year. I would be shocked if they did. You know, the Celtics are playing for something different this year. So there is kind of that going. And it's like, yeah, in-season tournament, you know, it's not a title, but it's like, it's something, and they're going to have it. And there will be a banner put up at some arena somewhere, so it might as well be ours. And like, if you're Tyrese, it's like, all right, well, first step is like, let's win one of these and let's see where we're going. So I love that. And I think that's, you know, when you look at the teams that are left, I think the Pacers have that all the way to the finals. Like, I think they're going to have a similar thing if they play the Bucks. Not that the Bucks don't care or the Bucks don't want to win, but there is something in the back of your mind where it's like, if you're the Bucks, it's like, all right, if we lose this, it's not, we still got something else we can go out and win that we need to go win this year. If you're the Pacers, like, this is really your shot. Like, it's such a perfect marriage. And you mentioned the players on the bench. Like, there's just one tweet that made me crack up last night. It's after that Nesmith dunk, and he gets mobbed. Like, the fans are going bananas. The Pacers bench runs out like it's a 16 beating a 1. And Kevin O'Connor just tweets out, like, but are the players going to care about the tournament?
Right.
It's like this wild scene. Yeah, no. So I mean, it's, dude, it's like you said, it's a fun team. It's a great time to be a Pacers fan. You know, I will say, now that we're getting to the next stage, these are weird game times. Like, I do think the
I was
NBA
just about to say, that's my biggest gripe.
Yeah.
The 5 p.m.
Yeah, like, it's a weird, like, you get all of this good energy. You're like getting going, and it's like a 5 p.m. on a Thursday, and then like,
which is 2 p.m. for you know, being out there in Vegas. Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around the logic there.
I don't know, unless you're trying to stay away from Thursday night football, but then it's like just put both the games, go Friday night, and then screw it, just go head to head on Sunday. Like I understand the NFL is king, but at some point you're gonna. I mean, they're going up against Monday Night Football last night. You can't do that's the one thing where I'm like, you've built up all this interest, and for me, it's like. Again, not Pacers don't need a schedule around Scott's, but it's like I think I'm like a lot of people. Like I have to work, and then my son has a basketball practice that I'm coaching at 7:00. So I'm like, all right, we'll watch the first quarter, and then we'll pause it. And it's like, like 5:00 is a weird time, and it just feels like you have all this momentum, and then you're kind of turning it into a weird like, well, I'll just watch on. You take away some of the immediacy of it, and not to mention if you're the Bucks or the Knicks, like you're playing tonight. And you got to turn around and play a 2:00 game Vegas time in less than 48 hours. What are you doing?
That's at least the Pacers got the good end of that side. Although on the TNT broadcast during the first half last night, they slipped up and were like, the Pacers are getting on an airplane tonight, and it's either to New York or Milwaukee, but they don't know where they're going. I'm like, or Vegas.
Yeah.
Like, come on now. But yeah, the game time stinks for me. I'm in the same boat. I've got work, and then I'm going straight to a work dinner.
Yep.
Like that'll be wrapped up by 7. So like if game time was 7:30, would have been perfect. But now I've got to like figure out how to like get this thing on my phone, or I don't know what I'm gonna do. But
yeah,
at
least you can DVR it. Like, thank God it's not on Bally's. Like, because I know there's been that's a whole nother pod to talk about how much Bally's sucks. But it's like even when the app is working, it sucks because it's like there is no way to like watch a game like after. I know you can, but it's like if you catch there at like right after the game's over, it's like all you get is the post game. You can't watch the replay of the game until like an hour after, and then it's like buffering to find the spot. Like it's Bally Sports app is just complete garbage. The fact they signed another year with them just sucks. Like I'm like I wish Ishbia would buy the Pacers just to put us on free TV.
I know. I feel bad for like Chris and Quinn and Jeremiah Johnson and those guys, because I know deep down they've got to know this app is horrible and it's like degrading the product of what they're putting out night in and night out. So I feel bad for them, and the fact that you can't get it on like a YouTube TV or where everybody's going, like it's really dumb.
I have friends who I always joke like I'm telling the Pacers are fun to watch. Like I wouldn't know. Like I wouldn't know. It's like
that's what a lot of people are like. Tonight's my first night I can watch the Pacers. I'm like, well, I think they got you hooked.
Probably. Yeah, I mean they should have gotten you hooked and get them there. Here, going out a bit, like I want to get your thoughts on how you think they'll do in the tournament. But it's just the only thing with this team is a good and a bad thing. But this dichotomy with this team is, I've mentioned this a couple times on the pod, like 4 of the losses at home, a lot of home losses, but 4 of the losses at home were really like the Chicago, the Trailblazers, the Hornets. Like those were really tough losses in that you had the game, you kind of let it slip away for a bunch of different reasons. On the positive side, like when the games are important and they're these, in-season tournament games, this team locks in and plays at a level where you're like, shit, man, this team could win a round or 2 in the playoffs if they play like this. On the flip side, they're still a really young team that's figuring it out, and they have a really hard time being consistent and kind of winning the games. They win 3 or 4 of those that I mentioned, and they could be like 14-3 and like second in the East right now. They're not. They're 6. That's what worries me about this team for this year is it has a really high ceiling, but it can't kind of get that like, hey, it's a random Thursday night, you're playing the Trailblazers, you're not shooting well. You got to win the game against the Trailblazers, and they don't, or they play the Raptors, and it's like the Raptors aren't doing anything amazing, but you somehow just kind of kick the can away and lose the game against the Raptors. That's the only thing that worries me about this team, especially coming out of the high on this, in-season tournament is, are they going to be able to find a little bit more of that consistency to get them through to a point where they give themselves a good shot at a, good playoff seeding or getting out of the play-in?
I think what's great is they've got a coach in Carlisle that can showcase that without like degrading them. Like, hey guys, like you've got this in you. You've showcased it. We can watch the film, watch your energy level, all those things versus this Blazers game or that Bulls game or whatever the case may be. And and it's teachable moments for a young team, and you've got a veteran coach that's been there, done that at the highest level, that can kind of showcase that. Because I mean, NBA, you're dealing with a lot of egos. There's a certain way you got to be able to talk to the guys and get messages across. Like, you can't just mother F them. Like,
Right.
that doesn't work in the NBA. And so I do think they have the right guy at the helm to bring that out of them and showcase that. But yeah, you're right. Like, it's been inconsistent. It was a very frustrating watching the last couple weeks leading into the in-season tournament. And then, like you said, can kind of turn it on, and you're like, dang, like, if they could do this, pretty solid. I mean, their defense was locked in last night against the Celtics. Like, Celtics have some superstars; they're going to score some points, but
Yeah.
the Pacers were locked in. They were executing. I thought it was very impressive. I thought it was their best defensive effort probably of the season.
Yeah.
And so I'm with you on that. I think it's going to come with just maturity, and it's somebody like a Bruce Brown can help that too. Like, somebody that got to won the NBA Finals and saw the level of play it takes night in, night out. I think they'll get there, but I do think it's probably not this season where we see that level of consistency, just because of the immaturity of the team and how young they are.
No, I agree. And I think, this is something we talked to Dustin about. Asking him, like, who do you think Haliburton's number 2 is? And then, do you think that number 2 is on the team right now or not? And Dustin said no. And I think I agree. And I think this is where this team is in a really I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Like, I think it's in an interesting spot because on one hand, feel like you're entering the Haliburton window right now. On the other hand, I do believe these windows sometimes can be a lot shorter than you think. But again, it's like this is really a two-edged sword. You also don't want to go nuts too early. As I look at this team, I think you have a really nice set of pieces. I think the mistake would be to try and make a move right now to try and get somebody, because I think you just got to see, like, how is this going to bubble up? How is this going to be, like, and he's playing like it, man. It's like, is Buddy Hield worth maybe a 2 or 3 year extension at 25-30 million a year? Maybe. I mean, he plays so well with Haliburton. He knows exactly where to go. It's like, you've kind of resurrected Obi Toppin's career thus far. Can you get him on kind of a player-friendly deal? But then the thing that I keep looking at is, I'm not saying any of these guys are right, but, when you look at who's good with Haliburton, it's somebody who can kind of move without the ball, who maybe is, what the Pacers need, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe some defense. You look out there. Not saying these guys are right, but, free agents this offseason is, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, and the wild one is Paul George. He's got a player option, but they're all free agents this offseason. And so I look at this as, like, I'm okay with kind of a young, stutter step season. Maybe it's a little bit forward, a little bit back. This team needs to get into the playoffs, at least in a play-in game capacity, get some of that experience. But I would say, maybe focus on trying to get one of those guys this offseason without giving up all of your dry powder. And then you can also maybe go and make a move and try and get somebody else. That's how I look at it, but I'm curious your thoughts.
I'm pretty much in complete alignment with you. I think you let this season play out. You figure out where your pieces are. You've got a lot of cap flexibility. You've
really
got
do.
All your future draft picks that you can move for the right pieces. So, like, the Pacers are in a really good spot in terms of figuring out their future. But I'm also with you where, like, you're coming into that window where with him. And so for that, I think there's some merit to, like, okay, free agents haven't wanted to come here because you haven't had a guy like him. But now you've got a Tyrese Haliburton who's going to get everybody else involved. He's an alpha, and guys are going to gravitate towards that. So I do think if you're ever to sign a big free agent, it's coming up in these next couple of years.
Yeah, the Paul George one, it's almost too perfect, but it's like it does seem to align. It's like,
how old is he?
He's
32, 33.
33, 34. I mean, you're unfortunately kind of missing some of the better years. But, that's a guy who, I think Siakam's in a similar boat, but, that's, for Paul George, it's like that Clippers thing is falling apart. Like that's an implosion waiting to happen. they've had 4 years now with him and Kawhi. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen. Paul likes to take a couple games off, but Paul definitely doesn't like being the alpha. That's been shown time and time again. And he could come here and I don't know. It feels like that would be a really perfect offseason. Anyway, I'm dreaming. It probably isn't going to happen, but I do think
he's having a good year. I mean,
yeah.
he's getting older. Like I think you'd have 3 good years of him, like 3 years where he could still play at a pretty high level.
Yeah, but again, that's the guy again. It's like if he's a free agent next year, it's like this offseason, like don't waste all your flexibility, don't waste all your picks, go do it. But I do think the thing that you mentioned needs to always be mentioned is that where the Pacers are at right now, they have a ton of cap flexibility. And they have a lot of guys on a lot of good contracts, a lot of movable pieces, but that's going to change because as the Haliburton deal continues to escalate, and then you start looking at like, do you need to sign Buddy Hield? Like you got to figure out what you're going to do with Buddy Hield because you can't just let him go away for nothing. You either need to trade him or you need to look to re-sign him or get a really good feel that you're going to. Obi Toppin is one where he's playing himself into a larger contract, which is great for him, maybe a little bit tough for the Pacers. And so the cap flexibility, tough for me to say, it's going to tighten really. You probably in like a year or two, it's going to be tight. You got to start making some. Matherin's going to need an extension at some point. And is he the guy you want to give the extension to or not? So anyway, it's just you're in a nice spot. The window is open, but I also think teams can get a little bit too cute or sometimes think like, oh, we have 4 or 5 years on this. Like we'll just take our time. It's like no, you can't, and then you end up getting locked in. But I do think that the new apron and double apron thing are really good for the Pacers because a lot of teams out there like the Celtics, like the Bucks, like the 76ers, like the Clippers, they're just in a spot where they can't play in the same field that we are going to be able to play in free agents and in signing guys. And that's going to be really good for the Pacers over the next 18 months, I think.
Absolutely. And you also I think Pritchard and those guys have also learned their lessons in terms of like, if you do get complacent, guys get frustrated, like your stars get frustrated and they want out. And not saying Haliburton will do that, but I would prefer to not go through that again.
No, I know. I don't see that, but it is true. Something Dustin brought up in the last pod. He's like, his worry with Haliburton is like, are we going to wear him out just by like, not so much playing time, but just kind of being the burden of the franchise and just pushing everything on him. Like you got to recruit this guy, you got to do that. And at some point, is he going to be like, all right, man, it's just not going to happen here. But that's so far away. That's no fun. How do you, we only know half of the in-season tournament field. How do you think this plays out? And how do you think the Pacers do in Vegas?
Their history says they win. Yeah, right.
I
never lost an in-season tournament game. Of course,
that's fair.
No, I like you said, the fact they beat the Celtics. I thought that would be their toughest matchup. Going into it, I feel like the Bucks wouldn't have that chip on their shoulder. I could see the Knicks beating them tonight. I like the way the Pacers match up with the Knicks.
So do I.
Very contrasting styles. Good offense always beats good defense in basketball, especially in NBA at the level that these guys can play. And then if you can get to the championship, like I think you throw records out the window no matter who they're playing, whether that be the Pelicans or Suns or who else, Lakers.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited, man. Like I said, it's fun. I think this in-season tournament has been a huge hit.
I agree.
And I think it's only going to get better from here. Like they're gonna come up with better names of the stuff and all of that. Throwing an Elam ending and I'm all in, baby.
Oh, I love that idea. I like that. No, and I think this tournament, obviously from an Indiana perspective, this is played perfectly for us and we've had the most interest for it, but it's going to work. And like I've been saying, it's one of those things where it seems weird now and it seems silly to be like, oh, like you're going to win an in-season tournament. Who cares? But like, I'm telling you, in like 30, 40 years, when our kids are debating basketball, it'll be like, oh yeah, but remember, Jokic was awesome. And he won an in-season tournament and a NBA championship in the same year. Like, Jordan never did, couldn't have done that. But it's like, Paul George never did that. Haliburton won the tournament, but he won it, it's like, this will become part of your legacy. And this will be like, it's not going to eclipse championships, but it'll be like, all NBA defensive teams or all NBA or, all-star starting games, or, this will be something where it's like, hey man, did you get a year where you won that? Or it's like, this guy's great. He won 3 titles, but it's like Durant never won an in-season tournament. And, it's like in 20 years, this is going to be part of resumes and part of legacies. And so I think it is cool. And it will be one of those things where if the Pacers win this, and then Haliburton goes on to greater things, it'd be like, oh yeah, like I remember when he won that in-season tournament and had some moments, and then they just had to coalesce and find the right team around him. So anyway, it's awesome. It felt like the Pacers had a moment last night, and I got to give them credit, man. And this is the thing that I most like about Haliburton is when the moment comes to him, he steps up and gets it done. You saw that against the 76ers in that in-season tournament game. Like the stakes got real high, real quick. That was a back-to-back. They had played him the night before, and it's like you could see that ratchet up, and he's like, we're getting this done. Like, we are getting this done. They finished the game like a 12-2 run. When the lights get bright, Haliburton steps up, and to me, the highest thing about last night was he didn't have it. Like, he didn't have it in the first half, and he's like, and screw this, I'm going to get it, and I'm going to get it done. And you just don't see that a lot, and like that's I don't want to pile on like Oladipo, but that was always the thing with Oladipo is like he had some great moments, but it felt very like, can I trust this guy? Like, is he going to show up in the playoffs when we need him? Thus far, man, in his short career, when the lights get bright or where it's like, hey, I want Haliburton to step up, he steps up and gets it done. So
rises to the occasion.
Really
Absolutely.
does. It's a great time.
It is. Yeah. I lost my train of. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I was going to say the Pacers have, I believe now they've played 3 teams they lost to of their 8 and have beaten all 3 on the second time.
Yeah.
In the Heat, the Sixers, and now the Celtics. And
Yep.
the Celtics was a 51-point drubbing.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, they didn't have Haliburton in that, but like to be able to avenge those losses also speaks like to why I think this team could be pretty good in the playoffs, because they can make adjustments after seeing how a team plays and come back better, which is big.
Yeah, I hope they can get out of the play-in part of the playoffs. That's a whole other topic, and they'll have to get a little bit of a letdown after this Vegas trip. But we'll get back together next week. We'll definitely do a recap of how the in-season tournament goes. But Tony, always fun to have you. Thanks for joining, and everyone out there listening, always appreciated. This is Scott for the Right Up Meridian podcast, signing off.